Hey Guitar Champion, what's going on? Justin Hornbach here, back from my practice dojo. Oh, and hello 𝗏𝗏𝗏. Hey, today I have for you a really cool interview with Matt Wright, who is a really good guitar educator and a really good guitar YouTuber. Definitely check out his channel. Today we're talking about some really interesting stuff. We're talking about muscle relaxation. We're going through a specific style of meditation, guitar meditation. We're talking about neuroscience and the development of Matt's guitar playing, because the interesting thing about Matt's playing is he's not playing guitar for too long. He already achieved a lot of technical goals in his guitar playing. So it's definitely worth to check this pretty cool interview and the new video of the League of the Extraordinary Guitar Educators. I wish you a lot of fun with this. Before we start, I want to thank Sennheiser for sponsoring this video, for sponsoring me and providing me with a new cool microphone that I have right here. I'm pointing at and I'm talking to, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is also sharing his beautiful voice with you guys. So much about that. Now let's start with today's interview. Here we go. Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to the League of the Extraordinary Guitar Educator show that I have here to invite interesting guitar educators that I think personally have something to say for the world of guitar education. Welcome here. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for the kind intro.
Yeah, perfect. So I have invited you here to this show because you have, as I already mentioned, some interesting things to say, especially about, today we will talk about, neuroscience, muscle relaxation, all these kind of interesting things. But the one interesting thing that stood out with your playing, in my opinion, was it's the amount of years that you are already playing. Let's start with that. How long have you playing guitar?
I will be coming up on 7 years in December, but only about 4 years with teachers.
So how old are you right now?
I'm 29.
So
I started guitar when I was like 2022, but my birthday's in February,
So yeah, like in pretty late age, I would say, compared to when you read all the interviews and all the magazines like Petrucci or all of our guitar heroes who started like 13, 11, 12, or like the classical masters who start like, I don't know, 6 years old, 7 years old. And yeah, but why is it different, or what have you done different in your guitar education, you would say, compared to the regular way how a lot of people are learning the guitar?
Well, it's really tricky because it's not like, oh, I just started guitar out of nowhere. I've been doing music since 6th grade when I started on string bass, and I was also in private lessons doing string bass until from 2006 to 2009, and then 2009 to 2017 I played French horn while keeping up with electric bass. So that really gave me a lot of the left hand stuff, but all the right hand stuff was a complete mess until 2021. So about 4 years after I started, and then I kind of made some big breakthroughs in October 2023. But back to your question of like, what did I do differently, is when I decided to like, I'm going to take this seriously, is I got a teacher, and I got a teacher I really liked like right away. I think a lot of people are like, okay, how many free YouTube videos can I consume? But the biggest gap that a lot of people have is because they don't necessarily have like a big classical background like me. Like I went to music conservatory, where you really learn that however your kind of body wants to do things naturally is way often not the correct way for the most sustainable and flexible technique. And so having a good teacher helped to adapt what maybe I thought was correct, or maybe what I thought was correct from some videos I'd watched, into something that was most definitely sustainable and flexible and would work long term.
Awesome. So you had a lot of experience before you started guitar on how to learn an instrument in general, which I think can be quite helpful. I mean, I would assume that it would be for me easier now to learn a new instrument because I already know the rules on how to learn an instrument. But what did you bring, or what was your inspiration to get to guitar? Was you have always been a fan of guitar-related music? Have you always been a fan of metal music, or was it something else? to get the
Uh,
girls, to get all the
that
chicks.
is probably the second biggest heartbreak of my life, aside from, I don't know, a girlfriend breaking up with me or something. But literally, I remember the very first day that I like heard metal music. I was riding in my older brother's black Honda CRV. He was taking me to middle school, and he had this like, I think it was like Oppo brand radio or something. Like I remember the exact feel of the dial and like how excited I was to play these songs. And I was riding along, to sixth grade, and he puts on Symphony X, Eve of
Oh
Seduction.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm
Hmm.
just like, what in the world is this? This is the coolest thing I've ever heard. So there was that, and there was Pull Me Under. Those were like the first two songs. Just like, dude, I want to do guitar. This is so cool. And that would have been right at that age of 10 years old. But my parents literally said, they're like, no, you have to learn classical music first. And I was like, okay, fine. So I remember I tried trumpet and I tried string bass, and I was like really between those two. And so then I ended up on string bass, which was great because it gave me, the first four strings of the guitar. And then a year later, I did get an electric bass, and I was like working on like Aerotomania and like, just
Oh.
I was using my older brother's computer when I could get in his room, and like looking at like Guitar Pro tabs for like message in a bottle and like just like stuff that would be really simple otherwise. And I'm like sitting here like a classical musician, like C, 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 A, C, F. It's just like, this is not how this music is done. I had no idea. So that was kind of the start of things for sure.
Awesome, awesome. And when you started then playing guitar and playing the instrument, what would you say was the biggest challenge to understand compared to the string-based classical instrument?
Oh man. Well, on bass, the spacing is so much larger. And I think that that's something great that I also came into guitar with, is really extreme hand strength from playing bass. Like I didn't know really much about like that like Honor Thy Father is played in altered tuning. So like if I grab a bass, um, I'm not super worked up on it, but I can just,
Mm-hmm.
so like I have a lot of hand strength. Like that song is, everything's tuned a half step up in C. It's not played. It's
Mm-hmm.
played right. So coming in with a lot of hand strength was helpful, but you can see the spacing on this is so much wider and the strings are so much bigger. So it was like alien how like close together and how small everything was. And even now, like sometimes I'm playing like, like 20, 24. I'm just like, this is so, I wish this was different. Like I'm not gonna get a new scale guitar, but like I wish this was different. um So that was a big thing. And then there was also like, I'd say I feel more comfortable playing bass with fingers really than I do a pick, as yeah, it's
Yeah.
all gonna be stuff. And so that carried over to guitar well. So like the finger picking kind of thing that came pretty naturally. Um, but I'd say the biggest thing was the right hand. And what's crazy is I literally have a day or a video from the first day I played guitar. I think it was like December 22nd, 2017. My older brother gave me this really awful Jackson guitar. Like you couldn't play the high E string because like it was
Okay.
just so like the nut was not right. And like I would always have this little kind of shred on my hand here because the frets just tore up the side of your hand. But like I love the sound of guitar. That was always what drew me to it, was just the sound of like that roar of like distortion. Like this is so powerful and cool. Um, so back to your question. The biggest change was feeling a disconnection from playing the strings. It's like, okay, I'm holding a pick, but I feel like I'm far away from the strings instead of like, okay, like I know I'm on the A string, I know I'm on the D string, I know I'm on the G string, without even
Okay.
having to look.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, interesting. Yeah.
So I think right hand's going to be, I think that's the biggest challenge on guitar. Like
Mm-hmm.
most people are like, how do I play faster or how do I get things synced? Which usually because their right hand is kind of out of control going faster relative to left hand, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of yet to confirm it with some people, but yeah.
I mean, right hand is also your work as an educator nowadays a really big thing, which is good. I like people who are concerned about the right hand, because you have done some YouTube videos lately where
Yeah.
that kind of blew up. The one where you're talking about the correct picking position, and it's also something that I saw and where I also realized, and we did this well because we had a little bit of chat before we started that interview, is that we're on the same page when it comes to certain technical point of views, to certain guitar educational point of views. So what did this, where did this come from, this interest in this science background of education and this kind of affirmation into, okay, I want to do something correct and right, and I want to share it correctly?
I think the aspiration to play music comes from a potentially a dysfunctional place of wanting to be seen and recognized, which, you know, like if you listen to any Devin Townsend interview, he talks a lot about that. And I feel like that's something emotionally and psychologically I'm evolving through right now, is like, okay, well, like, wow, I am good enough to like do this.
Hmm.
And it's not this thing where I have to like shout to necessarily get attention and connection to do music with other people. So there's that aspect of it, but the whole guitar thing and wanting to do it right and be good, I guess, comes from a couple different places. Number one, I started doing the YouTube channel stuff because I realized that the teachers that I am so grateful to have gotten to work with, who they just don't really do lessons anymore. They're too busy doing real world music industry things.
Hmm.
That it was information that I got from them that I didn't get from anyone else, that was like so breakthrough. And I was like, this is so helpful for me, and I just want to share it. And it was frustrating to me being a younger, you know, or greener guitar player, watching different videos and going like, okay, why is one guy saying to do it one way, another guy saying to do it another way? So it's the teachers, and realizing that I can't find answers anywhere except these people who like nobody else is going to get in contact with, and I'm extremely lucky to be in contact with them. And I wanted to share what they had, because they're not going to sit there and make an online course or YouTube videos or whatever. So there's that. And then the other part of it was when I was forming technique, so many people out there, like, boggles my mind. They're like, oh, well, here's how so-and-so does it. And I'm like, okay, well, just because somebody does it that way doesn't mean that it's the best way. And long story short, what I came to realize, I literally hired and interviewed a neuroscientist. I paid a couple $100 for this interview. Is if I set my phone's right here, if I set my phone on the table and I say, brain, please pick up the phone. I don't have to think, contract bicep, extend, you know, let the hand go, open fingers just wide enough, but not too wide. You know, I don't need to go like this. I just need to go just a little bit, right? And then grip, but you don't need to grip all the way. Like, how does the brain fill all that in? Well, it turns out when you tell your body to do something, you're giving it like a little one-dimensional kind of AI model. And the brain is really smart, and it's going to go, hey, I think that the most energy efficient way for the body, not the most sustainable way to form technique. And that's an extreme difference that people need to understand. Energy efficient and being efficient on the energy efficiency for the body is something different than being efficient on the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the body's going to do it in the most efficient way. It's not going to move my arm all the way up here and then grab it down. It's not really going to do that on guitar or any other instrument. But like with brass, you'll see people like, and they'll puff their cheeks. Well, if you puff your cheeks, it changes how you can control the air on the instrument. So any professional brass player who's not like some, you know, jazz guy, I'm talking about like symphony orchestra player, you'll never see them like, maybe with like tuba, but like 99% of them, they're not letting their cheeks do that. So I realized working with these teachers, I was getting a lot of answers. And I'm still wildly grateful for my teachers, and I would pay double to do lessons with them. They've been that important to my development. But there were things or ways, stuff they couldn't answer or explain how they were doing it. And I was like, okay, well, how do I get my body to do that? And so that's what kind of put me on like the neuroscience kind of path. So I hired this neuroscientist. I realized that the body fills in whatever motion to get whatever result you're telling it to do. And then I was like, okay, well, if there's like me sending the instruction, and then there's the output. How can I get in the middle of that and shape what the body does to form like the best technique? And like with like picking stuff, everyone says like, oh, here's how so and so does it or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, there's basically like 4 ways the wrist can move side to side. It can rotate, and you can do this. So like going back to that picking video, like the thing that nobody talked about in any of their videos with how to hold a guitar pick is, well, how does the arm come onto the guitar? Because if the guitar is too low, the hand is going to react by turning up like this.
Yeah.
If I just move because the wrist can only turn up so much this way, so then it goes into rotation, you end up like that. So then the motion becomes flexion extension, or if your wrist is rotated out, it becomes rotation. But if it's, I mean, you can go decently low and still have wrist adduction, abduction, but whether you're kind of here or here, there's a wide acceptable range. So to wrap it all up, when I form technique, I asked not how do other people do it. I asked, starting from scratch, what is the best way to do this? And I think the thing that like Troy Grady brought to the market really well is how do we want the pick to move? And I think he did some description of the muscles, but I think it's a big claim, but I think I'm the only person saying, how do we get in the middle of that process and get specific muscles to activate and specific muscles to not activate? And so I think that would bring us to that like progressive relaxation topic, which we initially connected on.
Yeah. But before we start that, I want to just include that.
That was a lot.
That what you're saying were really correct, and I see it the same way, that often people as well get confused by the mechanic behind the picking, but also the way our default position, how we are setting everything up on the guitar. Because lately, for example, I saw a video from a pretty famous new metalcore kind of guitar player, and he was why are these kids nowadays pick like this? You don't have a good picking when you're picking with the radial and the diurnal deviation and everything. You have to
do the fancy scientific terms doesn't mean that you're right.
He does not know the fancy scientific terms. I knew it, but just added to it. But he was saying like, oh, you have to do something like this, like throwing something, etc. And then he starts doing the picking technique, and he did the complete opposite way of how he just described it, because what he was describing was his default position, how he gets to the instrument, to the guitar. And then he was doing something completely different when he was doing the picking mechanic, actually. So this is something that a lot of people often gets confused by, the picking mechanic, and as you've mentioned, how we actually move our arm to the guitar, to the string, etc. So that is really, really important. Definitely. And yeah, the big problem on YouTube is, or the problem right now as well, is that one person is saying this, the other one person is saying this, the other one is saying that. That can be quite confusing, I assume, for everybody who's starting. And I believe that you started playing guitar in an age where all of these information were already out there, or nearly all of these information were already out there. Before we go into the muscle relaxation thing, how was that for you, learning guitar in the world of YouTube as a, I would say, grown-up man, Because I would say that's still a difference between, learning guitar when you are 12 in this kind of age, in this kind of era, and 22,
Yes. That's a very interesting question. I'll explain how I recently made a lot of breakthroughs with voice, and I think that that'll explain to any viewer who's watching, understand a couple things. So the first thing, while we're talking about all this picking stuff that doesn't get mentioned, and it doesn't get mentioned because it's nuanced and it's hard to communicate, is that like down picking technique is completely different from shred technique. Like these are not the same thing. And so a lot of times you'll see an instructor saying like, oh, well, you should pick like this. It's like, okay, yeah, you should pick like that for that passage and that kind of playing. But like if you watch like some technical death metal, it's like they're going, it's not just how is he picking, it's how is he picking this section of the music, and then how's he picking that section of the music. Like, there's two different techniques going on. It's like it's like a bass player playing slap bass, and then he picks some finger notes, and then he goes back to slap bass. Like those are two different techniques. It's not one is better than the other. So so with voice, the way in which I sussed out you have to be able to suss out which instruction is good. And the way you can do that is, number one, by having a teacher who can, in the beginning, put you on the rails. Because what too many people will do, and I see that, like, I'm a marketer by day, I run Facebook ads for people. What too many people do is they go, how are the, multi-million-dollar companies doing it? Let me take that strategy and apply it to my $1,000 a month ad budget. It's like, it's just not the same. So there's that kind of thing. Where's it going with this? I remember. So I'll get advertisers who want to train with me, and they're like, "Oh, well, I learned from so and so that I need to look at this metric." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's just. I want you to pour everything out of your head right now that you ever learned, because you have pieces and bits and pieces of all these different frameworks that together are like it's 10 different puzzle pieces from 20 different puzzles. Like, they're never going to fit together." And what you need in order to start doing this, or any skill, is you need a base foundation to say, like, okay, because otherwise there's no reference point of like good or bad. Like, you have to say, okay, my teacher taught me this. I don't know what, 10 years down the line, or 5 years or 3 years I'm going to need to play, but I know that my teacher told me to do this and their experience, and I'm going to trust them for a little bit. And then if you get 3 years down the line, and that technique isn't sustainable or doesn't work, then you can know that, okay, I need to change out that core piece of information. Then you start building the framework out from there. So what I did with voice is I started doing voice lessons with actually 2 different teachers at the same time, and I kind of tested them, and I was like, who am I going to stick with? Yeah. I still do an occasional lesson with the other one. They're good at different things. And so what I did with voice is I established a baseline technique. And then when I hit a wall, then I was like, okay, I think I know enough now that I can go out onto the internet and I can look at multiple different teachers and suss out what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. For example, there's a lot of people who advocate in the singing world for what's called open throat technique. And what happens scientifically if you use open throat technique is the way the air moves out of the body above the vocal cords and gets them to form, there's like a vacuum that forms. And when you use open throat technique, it kind of destroys the vacuum. So I'm talking to professional touring vocal teacher. That's the main lady I'm working with right now. And she's like, oh yeah, I know one of the people who does that technique. And they come back like after every show and they're talking like this, and their voice it doesn't sound good. Whereas my voice, it still sounds good after a show. Why is that? Or like, yeah, I remember that singer sounded great, and then they come back this year and they're missing 3 or 4 notes off the top of the register. It's like, okay, now that we have a foundation, now that we have foundations, now we can go out and explore other techniques and kind of, put this little, add-on to our little spaceship and say, okay, does this make the spaceship go faster? Does it make it more energy efficient, or, whatever, right? It's the spaceship of technique. That's a fun analogy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you just said some really, really right things. First of all, I think it's totally the right way to go. Okay, as a student, and this is something that I would recommend for a lot of people, is get the foundation, the basic right, and thereby trusting
even if it's just like 2 or 3 lessons.
Yeah. And just by trusting 1 or 2 teachers, and then after you have gained certain experience with the instrument, you are more able to be out in the wild world of YouTube and understanding or judging, like, okay, this method would work for me, this method from that guitar player wouldn't work for me, etc., etc. I mean, it is the same for us still. I mean, I'm still learning, we are all still learning. It was the same process for me, for example. I can compare that pretty well, not on a technical kind of level, but it was the same process when I studied jazz guitar, and I've learned jazz guitar because when I started to study, you had already so many books out there about jazz improvisation, and one guy is talking, yeah, you should use this approach, improvising over that accord. The other one is saying you should do this approach, improvising over that chord. And for me, my way actually was, I trusted my teacher from the university who had a specific approach, the Pat Martino approach, because he was a really good friend with Pat Martino, and I just copied that approach, built my foundation on that, and then through that foundation I was able to take a closer look to the other approaches and then judge on them like, ah, okay, I could use this little thing from that approach, or use this little thing from that approach to build my own kind of thing. That's one thing where I would say, oh yeah, that's a really good answer for everybody who's out there starting with an instrument, being confused by all these different guitar players. And the next thing is, yeah, it's totally fine to have several teachers. And I absolutely, for example, I think it's really,
well, I think stick with one. Like if it's like your first musical instrument, probably
yeah,
stick with one for like
yeah,
at least a couple months, But
yeah.
if it's like,
That's true. When you're a little bit more experienced
yeah.
and advanced, then it's totally fine. And I think
Guitar is like my third instrument of formal study. I mean, if you want to count flute that I did for a matter of weeks in third grade, and piano that I did for a matter of like months, and then we moved, and then I like didn't play piano anymore, like in like fourth grade.
yeah,
Like bass was really the start of like, oh, I know how to read notes,
yeah.
and I know where the notes are on the instrument. I mean, in that regard, I guess voice is like my sixth instrument or something. So yeah.
This is where I also, as an educator, I have to say, I want to encourage people to get as well different information, different sources. I can't understand educators who are pissed off when students are telling them, oh, I'm also taking lessons by that guy or by this guy. For me, it's always like, yeah, these persons are maybe better in a certain field than I am, or explain certain things differently than I do. Go ahead. Take lessons from that guy, take lessons from this guy as well. So these are the two things where I just wanted to add.
Come crawling back to me when he
Yeah.
doesn't know the stupid technique.
Yeah, totally. Where's Igby? I need my evil cat for these kind of things. Yeah, but then let's talk a little bit about the muscle relaxation system, because that I think is really, really interesting and really new kind of approach that not many people have spoken about.
Yeah. Cool. So in college, we had a really cool class for all the French horn players, which I was French horn at the time. And everybody from PhD to undergrad. And we had this rehearsal hall in like a basement. It was like such a long walk down. And we'd line up in like a big, long kind of arc. And then the teacher would sit right there and he'd talk about whatever topic that he felt was relevant that day. And it was just called Horn Masterclass. And that was like 2015 was the year that I first got introduced to like any sort of meditation at all. And I think a lot of people, when they first get introduced to meditation, they're like, oh, that's something that like, Shaolin monks do and people do in temples and all this weird stuff. And, or like, oh, I'm religious, so therefore I can't meditate. And it's like, you're allowed to count to 5 and breathe in and out. It's okay. It's going to be all right. Now, if the intent behind that is spiritual, then that's different than if, anyways. But I got introduced to it in essentially a secular manner, so not religious. And the use of this was basically in order to calm the mind. So like, I think some context here. When people do classical music auditions, they're extremely high pressure, like way more high pressure than any like guitar audition I've ever done.
Totally.
In classical music auditions, they've got a screen, there's like 3 people hiding, and then because they don't want to know, if it's a man or a woman or, things like that. So you're not allowed to talk. So there's no like, oh, hey, is it like, do we need to start on measure 12 or measure 2? And you might have like just misread the sheet, or maybe there's a typo, and then you play and you start in the wrong place, and then like, boom, you're like cut. And that's like your life and death as like a classical musician. It's like, am I going to get this career position, or am I going to be, not? And they're going to audition 100 people. And by the way, they're only going to audition people who have master's and PhD degrees. So the amount of investment on that is so high for such a small chance to like get a job. And it's like all very like sexless. And in like rock music, it's just like, oh, hey man, yeah, like give me 2 minutes. I'm going to set up my stuff. Okay. Like this sound isn't working. Yeah. Let me tweak it. It's very casual. So that's why he wanted to, the teacher wanted to introduce the meditation stuff, so that we had these techniques to calm our body so that we could do consistent performance. Within meditation, meditation, these types of techniques, mind-body techniques like Alexander technique. I got introduced to all these kinds of things. Within that, there's one field called progressive relaxation. So like what I'll have students do is I'll have them, you don't even need the guitar plugged in. So we'll just have the guitar and we're just playing with whatever motion. I'm not worried about the motion right now.
Let me
And I'll
try
just
to do
say,
this as well. Just
okay, cool. Yeah. I'm going to tweak this so that you can see my hand. Okay, great. A little bit. The YouTube play bar will cover it. Sorry. It's okay. So we'll just start. And a lot of times people will carry tension in their bodies in very unrelated parts. So this takes about like 4 minutes to do. I don't think you want to go through the whole thing, do you? Or
Oh,
do
we
you?
could, let's do the whole thing. Why not? Why not? I think that could
Great.
be quite interesting for everybody.
Okay, cool. So all you're gonna do is you're just gonna pick on one string wherever. It doesn't matter the note. I'd pick something kind of in the middle of the guitar, like D or G. Just holding one note, and you're gonna close your eyes, and we're gonna take a deep breath. And I want you to imagine there's a nice sky blue light above you, just this nice little orb. And that orb is going to represent complete and total relaxation in every muscle that it touches. And what we're going to do is we're going to start at the top of your head. And I want you to imagine that light just comes down, just touches the top of your head. And if there's any like tension, like you're squeezing your eyebrows together, like on top of your head, I just want you to imagine that tension just melting and going away and just flowing out into the earth where it doesn't matter anymore. And now we're going to move that light down into your neck. And whatever tension is in your neck, maybe roll it out a little bit. Whatever's there, just release that tension and know that that's not part of guitar playing. That doesn't need to be there. It has nothing to do with picking and holding that tension. It's not of use any longer. That nice sky blue light is filling the space. And now we're going to move into kind of the shoulder, and maybe just move your shoulders around a bit, just so you know where they are. And maybe one of your shoulders has more tension, maybe it doesn't. But I just want you to imagine that sky blue light just kind of filling your shoulder muscles, kind of like one of those like big brain memes, it's kind of like that. Just imagine the light just filling that space and just taking all those muscles to complete relaxation, because it has almost nothing to do with guitar playing. And now we're going to move in kind of the bicep and tricep area. And that blue light's going to move in. It's going to fill that space. It's going to touch everywhere on the inside of that space in your body. And just feel the complete relaxation there. And now we're going to move. That light's going to scrape down into your elbow. And if there's any pain or tension or anything in your elbow, just know that that doesn't need to be there. It doesn't serve us. It's not part of guitar playing. And that nice blue light is going to heal any pain that's there. And now that light's going to scrape down into your forearm, that nice sky blue light. And it's just going to relax everything there. Now the forearm's a little bit different because it is really used when we play guitar. And the phrase that I want you to think about with your forearm is simply relaxed energy. It's not completely limp, but it's not tense and it's not engaged. It's a good word here is enough. So you're using your arm just enough. And now that light's going to move into the carpal tunnel area. And this is an area that can be challenging for some people. Maybe because they work at a computer, they have to write a lot. And if there's any pain or tension here, just imagine that blue light coming in and just restoring all the lubrication on those tendons. This healing energy comes in and makes it really easy and fun to play guitar. And now we're going to move into the hand. And I want you to imagine that you're gripping your pick at 50% strength, wherever you're at right now. And now I want you to take it down to 40%. Now take it down a little looser to 30%. Take it down to 20%, and then 10%, and then down to 5%, and keep going in 1% increments. 4, 3, 2, until the pick is kind of pressing back into your hand when you cross the strings. And now what I want you to do is just one by one, go up to 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. Maybe you're at 8 or 10. Maybe you end up at 20. And just keep going up just a little bit by little bit until you're gripping the pick with that relaxed energy, just enough. And now you can open your eyes, and we're done with the progressive relaxation. So now, Justin, we just went through that. It took like 3 or 4 minutes. I want you to just play something that you know, or just whatever, and just tell me how it feels now.
It feels hard to describe, to be honest.
Like weirdly easy.
Yeah, it's like more loose from the playing.
Mm-hmm.
It is more relaxed, definitely. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's kind of weird the first time you do it, but there's an interesting case study from Dawson Church, and I think it's either in one of his Bulletproof Radio interviews, or it might be in, it's not in his book Mind to Matter, which is also great, but I think it is in Mind to Matter. He talked about a TV executive who did his form of meditation for 2 weeks. It's called eco meditation. It's great if you want, 20-minute meditation to do. And he talked about that they did brain scans before and after this guy, and he was able to grow a particular part of his brain by, I think it was like over 100% or something, by just doing this meditation for like 20 minutes a day. So imagine, I mean, we just did 4 minutes. So if you're somebody who really struggles with pain or tension, imagine going through all your warm-ups, and maybe going through your warm-ups, find yourself to be kind of a tighter player, and then you do that at the end. So now all of a sudden you've kind of taken your body, okay, we're going to play here, and then you're just going to kind of level that down, and you do that day in, day in, day in, day in. Maybe it takes 2 weeks or so, but you're going to start to notice some changes into how hard you're hitting things. And it doesn't mean that you're going to lose control or you're going to get weaker. It just means you're going to be, it's like with singing. Like if I use so much diaphragm pressure to like get the same note, well, guess what? Like there's not any difference. There's not any benefit to me singing louder. It just wears out the vocal cords faster, called over singing. So now you're creating, instead of just, I'm tense all the time, you're creating a degree of control between like, okay, I want to play piano. Now I want to play triple forte, fortissimo.
Yeah. I feel some sort of body high, definitely. It's like a little bit of, I don't know, it's hard to describe, especially in not my native language. And it's relaxed. It is definitely relaxed, but I wouldn't say it is not relaxed like everything is loose now here between the pick and whatnot. It's a different kind of relax. That's really interesting right now. A little bit out of speech right now, losing the words, because I don't know how to describe it. I'm blown away. That's crazy. That's cool. I definitely have to do this a little bit often. I think it's easier to judge when you're doing this for a while now and you understand, because I know as well I have done a little bit of meditation in the past. I've tried to include a little bit of meditation as well in my practice routine, something like that, but not in particular like that. Or I like to do meditation. For example, yesterday I went to the sauna, and when it's really hot and you were like, okay, hey, I just want to push myself 10 more seconds, breathe in, breathe out.
So this is really fun. I want to go into what's happening in the brain when you do these types of things. So there's something called the default mode network, default mode network. And basically that is kind of this high level, hey, we got to cook tomorrow, or, like I got to go shopping, just all that little running dialogue. And when it's kind of like you give the little toddler in your brain an iPad, and you're like, hey, chill out. Like that's kind of what this does.
You have to train this as well. You have to train this to get easier into this kind of state of mind where you, I think for you, it's probably easier to do this kind of meditation because you're trained in it and you're used in it. But for somebody who this is completely new, it's really important to always.
I want to do another really fun one with you that we did in that Horn Masterclass. So this is the power of visualization. And there's a great article. You can still kind of find it. It might be behind a paywall. But it's called. It's from the New York Times around 2009 or something. Maybe 2009 to 2015, somewhere in there. And it's called How Olympic Athletes Use Visualization or something. And it talks about, there's so much interesting stuff around visualization. And instead of just doing the same thing over and over again, you can create not 100%, like the people who are into like manifestations, like it's the same thing if you just think it. It's like I literally found the study, and no, it's about 20% the same, at least when imagining an image versus actually experiencing the thing. But let's just do something fun. So I want you to take your, just pick and just hold it in your hand. Okay, and I want you to close your eyes. Yeah, just hover. I want you to imagine that it's a nice piece of chocolate. It's your favorite chocolate, and it's got that sweet taste. It's got that nice texture that you like about it that's different from other chocolates. And maybe it's just melting in your hand just a little bit right now. Is your mouth watering?
A little bit. No, not only a little bit.
We just started, dude. So imagine like carrying that on for like 2 or 3 minutes. So I experienced this when I did, I've done quite a lot of hypnotherapy. And I've been experimenting actually with using hypnotherapy to improve on guitar. That's a very early experiment though, so I can't say anything on it. And then also in EMDR. So in EMDR therapy, which is specifically used to overcome trauma, the first thing that they'll do, and there's different names for this, I would call it like anchoring, is they'll have you create in your mind what's called a safe place. And so imagine if on guitar, when you're on stage or whatever, instead of being like, okay, like, what do I think about? Right? Like maybe you've had that experience before.
Yeah.
Instead, you're taking the time ahead of time now, not only to define that place, but to know what your entire body should feel like when you're thinking and feeling in that place. That's something that you can replicate over and over and over and over and over. So yeah, it's we got down a little bit of a rabbit hole here with the hypnotherapy and EMDR and visualization. They're all pretty closely related, but I think to wrap it all up, yeah, if you just take the progressive relaxation, I like using a blue light. You could change it to green. Green is used a lot in hypnotherapy for healing type stuff. Whatever your color you like. I like blue or green, and just imagine it just, flowing all over your body. Do it, at the end of I would say do it after you played guitar a little bit, because then you're not going to be like all loosey goosey. Like when you ever like stretch too much and then go lift weights and you're like, I'm throwing stuff all over the place. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Interesting. I mean, but I can imagine the thing that you've just mentioned with being on stage. When I'm on stage, it's always like I have my safe space in my head, where especially when I wear in-ears, I'm a little bit isolated from the outside world. Yeah. It's weird that, because sometimes you have to play these fast, thrashy kind of riffs, especially in my Megadeth tribute band. That happens a lot, that I'm playing these fast riffs, but in my head it's like, oh yeah, what's going on today? What are we doing here? Okay, yesterday I did this, and Igby is fighting with the other cat. Oh, interesting. It's like or some stuff that's happened around the world. Here, the cable, or this guy, I remember this in the audience, and everything. It's like you are somewhere else, but it's kind of feeling safe, and I'm not nervous anymore. And could you two please stop fighting?
Everything I'm sharing with you is performance psychology. It's sports psychology, and so much of it has been like a lot of money research stuff has been put into sports, but all of the sports psychology stuff, like basically 100% applies to music.
Yeah. Wait a second, I just nearly flipped over my cam.
I'll let you edit.
Well, I can. My microphone, just have to put it on the right spot. So, there I'm back again.
Pretty much any sports science, sports psychology book will apply almost 100% to playing an instrument at a high level. So I think that might segue us nicely actually into how to practice and be productive in a short amount of time.
That's a really interesting approach. Are there any books that you can recommend for everybody who wants to get a little bit deeper in these kind of things?
Let me think of one. Not that one. I mean, there's a lot of great books out there. I mean, if regardless of all of this fancy stuff, which is add-ons to the spaceship of technique, if there's one thing that I think people can get right, it would simply be go read the book Deep Work and create a space in which you can really be truly productive in, where you're not distracted by your phone or by email alerts or, and like as much as few distractions as possible and reserve that space
Yeah.
for doing music or doing whatever kind of work it is that you do.
Yeah,
That would
totally.
be all this other stuff is kind of fancy
Yeah.
add-ons.
I mean, it's a space, but for me, for example, it's also the time. I'm somebody who loves to practice really, really early, and I'm fortunate, first of all, that I live in an apartment where I don't necessarily have neighbors, so I can be really loud at 4 a.m. That's absolutely no problem. And the next
Legend,
thing
I
is,
would not do that. I'm like, I'll be loud at 12 a.m.
the next thing is that I don't have a daily job, and I am fortunate, or my daily job is practicing guitar, luckily. But for me, practicing from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., that's my safe space of practicing. You know, it's nobody's calling you at this kind of area. Nobody is disturbing you, or maybe some students who lives in the States, because at 4 a.m. my time, it's like 8 p.m. your time, or something like that, and maybe that, but usually it's my safe space, and I know that, okay, because when I'm practicing at, I don't know, like let's say 11 a.m. or something like that, I have that feeling of, oh, I'm practicing while everybody around me is now working and doing productive stuff, and this kind of stressed me out, you know. But when I'm practicing and I know, okay, the world is right now sleeping, at least here in Germany, I don't know, it helps me, this kind of safe thing. So that's something that I also recommend to a lot of people, like find the time where it's most relaxing for you in your safe space and practicing, you know.
Yep.
I mean, I can believe that, or can imagine that it is hard maybe to find the right time when you are working 9 to 5, when you have like 2, 3 kids, and etc., etc. But I think it has a lot of thing to do with breaking that and building up that habit, and just trying out, testing out, and then sticking to this kind of habit, you know.
Yeah. I think the best thing that you hit on in there is find the time that like works best for you. Like I find
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
was like I'm kind of like challenging myself over these next 30 days. I'm like, okay, I need to get to my like edge, like my edge of picking fast every day if I'm gonna really move the needle
Mm-hmm.
and play some of the things I want to play. Like I can't work on music some days and then work on picking the other days and then work on music 2 days and then do picking hard. You know, it's like I'm gonna warm up, but like getting to like my very edge of things, it takes a long time to really build it up. And it won't take that long forever, as we kind of chatted before. But right now I do need to put up that time. But like for me, I was like, I gotta make it first thing in the day to make sure I get it. And I was trying to do that. I was like, nah, this ain't it. It's like and then I went back to like doing like 7, I don't know, maybe like 9 p.m. I'll start and then I'll wrap up around like 12 or something.
Yeah, that's
Oh, I'm
totally
glad
fine when it's
that's my
your,
time for
yeah,
guitar.
yeah,
And I think the difference of me putting it like in that time at the end of the day, which I live alone as well and don't have neighbors um or roommates and things like that. Putting it at the end of the day, what was important about that for me was that I can do kind of, you know, like an hour and a half ish, maybe take like a 20-30 minute break, grab something to eat, and then continue instead of like breaking it up across the whole day where it's like, okay, I'm going to do, you know, the core parts of the warm up in the morning, you know, but I've only got an hour. I feel constrained on my time. And then in the evening, I've just got more time to do it all at once a little bit, you know, like it's going to be broken up. There's going to be some breaks in there. But generally that whole session,
yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah, it's really important to find your time and to find your approach. And that's something that I also recommend for people to take your time finding your approach, because sometimes it takes times finding the right approach, how we work, how we manage our time. I mean, I'm lucky I found that kind of thing in guitar pretty early on, but everything else, for example, as being a self-employed kind of person and finding your best way to do time management, to do work management, all this kind of stuff that sometimes
yeah.
costs time to find your right approach. But as soon as when you find that right approach, then you know, okay, I can rely on that, I can build a habit on that, and this is something really, really cool. And that's totally fine whenever you're doing it, you know. There's no golden rule, like, and you have to practice in the morning or you have to practice in the evening. You have to practice when it's best for you. The most important thing is
there
that
are
you're
some
practicing.
neuroscience studies on like, you know, if you go to sleep right after practicing fine motor skills, then, you know, but again, like that's great. It's cool. Whatever. I'm glad you did a study, but guess what? Like is that the way that works in the real world?
That's that's a
Maybe
good
not,
point. That's a good
But
point.
I think for the people like I don't, like I said, neither of us like have kids and all these things.
Yeah.
But one thing, I watched like a ton of interviews. I really like the charismatic voice. I've listened to all the Devin Townsend podcast stuff. I like a lot of Neil Morse stuff. He did a podcast, and one of the things that I found is like a common theme with the people who are, busy with kids and other things is they're like, this is my sacred time, and like my
Yeah.
partner knows that during this hour, the kids know that during this hour or this 30 minutes, like that's my time, and I'm going to use it to play video games or work on guitar or whatever. And the more like consistent that you do that, and then I think the other thing is like, have you kind of like, I feel like I'm having the shift right now of like, oh, okay, like wow, I've got a little bit of something on this YouTube thing, and like I have like some products. I guess I can maybe justify spending a little more time in the middle of the day doing this guitar thing and content creator thing. And like I practice music now and it's not bad, but like I'm like, oh, this is like work. Like I actually have to prioritize this in a different sort of mindset than I used to. Did you experience that shift, and kind of when did you experience it?
Not necessarily, I would say, because I own.
Well, you went to university, and then you've kind of always been a working musician, sort of.
Yeah. I never did.
Okay.
I once had a job when I was in, like, oh, my cat is a little bit hungry. I'm sorry about the meowing in the background, but when I was in my early 20s, I had like a job in a call center, calling people, annoying them on the phone. I think this is where I developed my speaking skill a little bit. But no, since 2012, something like that, I'm making music full time. So I never had to justify my work as a musician somehow, because I always did these kind of things. But yeah, I can understand what you mean with
the relationship will change and evolve over time, basically.
Yeah. So great. One last thing before we're going to wrap all of this up together is, what would you recommend everybody who is starting now or who's in like an early phase of learning guitar? What is there one thing that you would recommend where you would say, okay, you have learned it in your past and it's really important, where you think, okay, that's the one thing, follow that thing?
Oh man, learn scales, learn a little bit of music theory, learn chords. Because if you want to play, Winter Sun or Dream Theater or Symphony X or whatever, like there's so many people who come through lessons and they want to play some periphery thing or whatever, and all they know is like tab. And like tab is a great tool. I use tab a lot. Tab tells you the position to play on the guitar, but it doesn't inform the relationship between the notes.
Yeah.
And it's great if you can, feed a little, Scantron in that has, a bunch of numbers, and you can perform that. But you'll find it's a lot easier, especially if you want to get into writing your own music. If it's like, I'm going to go from a G chord to a B minor chord and then to a C chord. And I know that works because B is the median in G, and that's going to be a half step away, and it's going to sound like this, I saw a great thing on social media the other day. It said, music theory doesn't take away from your ability to play and perform or be creative. It allows you to create those things consistently.
Yeah, totally. That's a whole kind of box that we could open here right now, like whole kind of topic, because music theory is such a useful tool that helped me in so many fields, arranging, composing, etc. And it's not destroying creativity, which is somebody still believing that. Please desubscribe to this channel, unsubscribe this channel, because music theory helps you so much. It's such a great tool.
It'll help you communicate with other musicians. Like it's great if you get in a band and like everyone's like, oh yeah, here's the tab, bro. But like, okay, well, what if you're like a really fantastic player, which if you're watching me and Justin, you're on your way. If not already, you're probably smashing it. But you'll get into other bands, like, and then you say like, hey, what's the sheet music for this, or like something that's really intricate. It makes it so much easier to communicate with all kinds of musicians. I cannot go to a piano player and tell him like, yeah, play the G string 3rd fret. The piano player would look at me like, the fuck, come on, dude. Yeah,
you have to know that this is the B flat.
Yeah, I'd love if we had time to get into like the how to practice stuff. I don't know if you want to run long, but Yeah, up to you.
Yeah, totally. Go ahead.
Okay, so Justin posed this. He is part of the structure for this interview, and so I want to make sure that we hit on it. But one of the things that Justin said, he was like, "Well, I think it's really fascinating that you've made as much progress as you have in such a short amount of time." And I have done that not just because I have, prior musical experience, but it's also, and Justin said this, it's not, what you practice, it's how you practice it. And, I've got, studies printed out around, they're actually under the laptop holding it up. And I've read all these things. But I think that if there's just one little nugget that I could define for people is that playing is not the same as practicing. Like if you play, the same 3 songs, over and over and over again for 6 hours, that's extremely different cognitively, then okay, I'm gonna like think about the next note that comes, the 7th of G major. Like, what is that note? And building that pathway and thinking about it. Or, okay, let me put these 2 measures on loop. And it's funny, the default in Guitar Pro for the looper thing is like 10% jumps. So I had a guy email me last night and he's like, yeah, I'm going from 60% to 70% to 80%, but it's not getting better. I was like, that's a big jump. Like it's like clicking your metronome up like 20 beats per. That's a huge jump. So in Guitar Pro, there's like 3 little dots next to like the thing in Guitar Pro 8, and it says like repeat countdown or between loops is the switch. And you can make it recount off. So go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it'll play it again. So turn that on. That helps a lot. And then practice like one little thing. Start at like 50 or 60%. And then if you click the little drop down on the percent, then it says custom values at the bottom. If you open the custom values menu, then you can say, okay, I want to start at 30%. I want to start at 31%. And I want to go up by, I usually do like 2% jumps, and I usually do 2 or 3 repeats. And that'll get you actually practicing instead of just, oh, I'm playing the same thing over and over again. And that's a great method. Learn the riff. That's the first part. It's like learn and pretty much memorize the riff, get like a base level of performance, and then start doing it with the looper. Sometimes doing it with the looper, like I'll do it and it's like, it's not getting better. So I'll take a break and then I'll just repeat, just like I'm working on this like in the name of God thing right now. And I've just got this little, and just making sure that that lower note speaks every time. Like I'll isolate that for just like 2 or 3 minutes. And like another big thing I got from all these studies is use a kitchen timer. Don't use your phone. Your phone's a massive distraction. Like it's useful, it's a tool. But if you've got like a little Instagram notification that comes down, like, oh, I got to check this message, right? Like, no, just buy this. It's like a couple dollars and it's going to change your life. And is that worth a couple dollars? Yeah, it is. So get a kitchen timer, practice on something for like 3 to 5 minutes, and then go practice another little segment, and then switch back, go back and forth, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, until you get them up to, the percentage speed that you can play them well that day. And maybe, press a little bit beyond, that's important. And then start trying to connect those. That's called chunking, which has been covered well on YouTube. That's not the only thing that'll get you faster, but that's what true practice really consists of. And then the last thing I would like add here is when I interviewed the neuroscientist guy, is I said, well, what's the difference between slow and fast practice? And what he told me, and everyone's like, oh, slow practice, you got to slow practice forever, and oh, you got to fast practice forever. Like there's 2 camps and they hate each other for some reason. It's like, here's the most real answer to that question. What happens in the brain when you do slow practice is it goes A to neuron B to neuron C to neuron D to neuron E, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, over and over and over again. So it's building this long pathway, right? And then when you play fast, it's trying to go A and then go over to E, A to E, A to E, A to E as fast as it can, because it's going to be too long to go down that other pathway. So it's kind of like if you lived in a neighborhood and you wanted to go see your friend next door, and you drove all the way, a whole loop around the neighborhood, and then you went to your best friend next door, versus just you went next door to him. Like it'll get you to the same spot, but one is going to be a lot more fast than the other. It won't necessarily teach you in the same way though. Like if I go around the neighborhood, I'm going to get to know the neighborhood. So it's important to build the A, B, C, D, E. But as soon as you get that and you can start kind of repping things, let's say you get in the 50 to 70% kind of range and you can kind of play through it, start like jump up to 80, jump up maybe to 84 or 86, maybe 90%, depending on the speed of the riff, big time, and your playing limits and abilities. Because what that'll let you do is, instead of just building that slow pathway, and then when you try to go fast, the brain's running the slow pathway, now you're going to run the fast pathway, and you're building that a lot faster and earlier on. So I think that was super important. So thanks for letting me share that and extending just a smidge.
No, super, super awesome. I mean, these kind of informations, they're so valuable for all of us, for me and for the audience out there, because we all can learn from it. That's the most important thing, to learn and to progress together, to hopefully become better musicians one day.
Yes.
All right, Matt, thank you.
End up in a guitar Valhalla together. Be great.
Yeah. That's a really cool image, to be honest. Yeah. All right, Matt, thank you so much for being here on this channel. Everybody out there now who has watched this interview, go out there, check out Matt Wright's guitar YouTube channel. He has some really incredible and amazing videos out there, and they are long. I love long form videos. It's not a 30-second Instagram TikTok reel. It is like 1 hour long video about picking and about bending and about whatnot.
No, they're like 30. The longest is 40 minutes. And the idea with this is, instead of like breaking up a bunch of concepts into a bunch of little videos, like, I don't assume that you know anything, and I try to put all of the answers in one place. And there's every one of them is timestamped. So if you like really want to jump around, which I don't recommend, because you might just miss one little 1% tip that's going to change everything for you.
Yeah.
But everything's timestamped, and I tried to put everything in kind of one place. So.
And I mean, what are 40 minutes compared to 4 years or something like that? You know, it's like, it's
yeah.
you know, grab yourself a tea, a coffee, or a beer or whatnot, something to eat, and then just watch this instead of the next Netflix show or whatnot. All right, Matt, thank you so much again for being on this show, and can't wait to hear and learn more from you, from your channel. Can't wait when you bring up the next video. Is there anything planned right now?
I just got into a band. That's exciting. It's called 𝗚𝗚𝙤𝙦𝗚𝗚. Great music. I think there needs to be some work on like the PR side of things. So slowly that'll evolve, which is really exciting. What else? Yeah, I mean, the next videos that are planned are like, they're on practice. They're on. We are going to do some videos finally on some right hand stuff, which I'm really excited about, and working on some of my own music slowly but surely.
Awesome.
So yeah, always lots of little things in the works.
Awesome. So definitely can't wait to see more of it, and everybody out there as well, hopefully now subscribing to this channel. And yeah, thank you again. See you next time. And I wish you a lot of fun, guys out there, practicing, learning, and mastering. Ooh, what's that? Zoom! Whoa,
it's
wow!
supposed to recognize hand gestures for waving, so
anything like that. Yeah. All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.